In 1945, after Japan's defeat in the war, nearly 2 million Koreans remained in Japan, most of them taken there through forced labor and conscription during wartime. And even after liberation, they could not return to their homeland, left to live under discrimination and poverty. Many of them dreamed of one day returning to their southern hometowns. But division and the Korean War closed that road. At that moment, North Korea dangled sweet promises: free education, free healthcare, guaranteed jobs and housing. Your homeland is North Korea. It is paradise on earth. This was the so-called repatriation project. But in truth, it was a massive state-run deception, a forced relocation built on lies and manipulation. Between 1959 and 1984, as many as 93,339 boarded ships bound for North Korea, and most of them were forever bound not to South Korea, their true home, but to the prison of the North. Among them was our subject today, Kawasaki Eiko, a 17-year-old girl who stepped aboard that ship. She believed in hope, but what awaited her was hell itself. This is the record of her 43 years. Kawasaki was born in Kyoto, Japan, in 1942, the second generation of Koreans in Japan. She excelled in school, diligent and bright. But in Japanese society, being Zainichi and ethnic Korean meant constant discrimination. Her future darkened before her eyes. Then came the promise: in North Korea you can go to university, you will be given free schooling and a home. To a young student, it sounded like the only chance at a real future. But her father was a stubborn and upright man. He opposed it fiercely, his face rigid, his eyes filled with tears. Do not go, never go. Yet his daughter was as stubborn as he was. Father, I want to study at university. My future is in North Korea. Please, just let me go once. At last the father gave in. Swallowing his tears, he gripped her hand and made a promise: if this is what you want, then go. But remember this: 1 year from now, we will all come after you. The whole family will join you there. That promise, made in the heat of argument and tears, would later drive Eiko to fight desperately in North Korea, to prevent her parents from ever setting foot in that land. In 1960, she boarded the ship. As the vessel pulled away, the scene was festive, like a celebration. Bands played, crowds waved, pink flower bouquets filled the air. When the ship docked at Chongjin, she remembered thinking the entire world had turned pink. But reality was different. The faces that greeted them were gaunt, hollow, weary. It felt less like a welcome than a capture. In the crowd, a senior student, someone who had gone before, shouted in Japanese, "Don't get off. Go back to Japan on this ship." But no one was allowed to remain. Some passengers even tried to hide in the ship's lavatories, refusing to step onto the dock. Yet North Korean security forces came aboard, dragged them out by force. Those who resisted fiercely, who screamed and fought, were taken away, never to be seen again. It was not a homecoming. It was a forced delivery into captivity. The illusion of paradise on earth crumbled the moment her feet touched the soil. Immediately, the stratified reality revealed itself. Returnees from Japan were placed at the very bottom of North Korean society. They were barred from the army, from government posts, from teaching, from the police, from any official position. They were given only the lowest, most menial work. In the guest house where new arrivals were lodged, instead of being asked where they wished to settle, they witnessed scenes of terror. Young men who had attempted escape were locked in concrete cells barely 70 or 80 centimeters across. Their bodies swarmed with maggots and cockroaches, flesh invaded by vermin. She watched, horrified and resolved: whatever I see, whatever I hear, I will never let it slip from my lips. I cannot cooperate with this regime. I will survive only through silence. And always, she thought of her father's promise, the stubborn, unyielding man who swore that in 1 year the whole family would come to join her. She knew he would keep his word. He was that kind of man. But she also knew the truth. This was not a land her parents could live in. This was hell. So she began writing letters back to Japan, letters filled with hidden signals. Bring needles and thread. Leave no dust behind. Bring even cracked pots and pans. These were not household requests. They were warnings. There is nothing here. Do not come. In one letter she invoked her younger brother's name, writing as though he would grow up, graduate from university, marry. And only then should the family come. It was a desperate code that meant, never come at all. She continued writing such letters for years, For more than 2 years, she lived with her heart in torment, every day torn between fear and longing. At any moment, she worried, her parents might appear in North Korea, dragged into the same hell she now endured. The thought filled her with dread, and yet, in the same breath, she longed to see them again. That mixture of terror and aching desire was her constant companion. Then one day, in North Korea, a hand touched her shoulder. She turned, and standing there was her mother's close friend, newly arrived from Japan. The woman's eyes brimmed with emotion. Her voice trembled as she said, "Your mother told me she was preparing to come, but I showed her your letters, the strange words, the odd requests. At last she understood. She unpacked her luggage. She decided not to come." At those words, a crushing weight that had suffocated Eiko for years finally lifted. The fear that haunted her that her parents would walk into the same prison she now lived in was gone. For the first time since her arrival, she felt she could breathe. Relief surged through her, so sharp it nearly brought her to her knees. But then, the woman's face darkened, and she spoke again. "I did not believe your words. I brought my whole family here to North Korea, and now I regret it." The contrast tore at Eiko's heart. Joy that her own parents had been spared. Grief that another family had been destroyed. The woman had carried her husband, her children, everything she loved, into the abyss, and there was no way back. It was the twisted cruelty of the regime, to crush not only bodies, but also the bonds of trust between loved ones, to make warnings sound like riddles, to force choices where every path led to tragedy. In saving her parents, Eiko had condemned another family, and though she had no blame, the guilt lodged in her heart like a blade. From that point onward, her life in North Korea became a long chain of trials. She married, not entirely out of choice, but under the silent weight of surveillance. Her husband was a man of talent and good standing, yet even that was tinged with suspicion, for returnees from Japan were always watched. Still, in him she found companionship, and together they tried to build a life in the shadow of fear. But then sickness struck. Her husband fell gravely ill with hepatitis. For 12 long years, Eiko nursed him through agony and decline. Every 2 days she walked hours in the freezing cold to fetch plasma for transfusions, carrying it under her coat through the night, so that he might live. Doctors later admitted, "He survived not because of us, but because of her." Her devotion became legendary in whispers. Yet for her it was simply survival, clinging to the one anchor she had left. At last, after years of struggle, he recovered. But fate was merciless. Not long after, an accident took his life in an instant. After 12 years of sacrifice, he was gone, and she was left alone, a widow with 5 children to raise in a country that despised her for being from Japan. Despair closed in on her. Twice she attempted to end her own life, believing that perhaps if she died, the punishment awaiting her children might somehow be lighter. She thought death could be her final act of love, but each time, something, whether instinct or the faint echo of her father's promise, pulled her back from the edge. She chose to endure, and so the years ground on, crushing and endless. Yet in 1986, after 27 years in North Korea, a miracle arrived. News came that her parents, still alive in Japan, would be permitted to visit. She was stunned. 27 years since she had last seen them. 27 years since she had waved goodbye as a girl of 17. Now she was a middle-aged woman, thin and weary, worn down by decades of hardship. When at last she saw them, she broke. Her father, the stubborn, upright man who had once wept as he let her go, asked her one question through tears: "If it was so hard, why did you not die?" The words pierced her heart. She had lived all those years only to stop them from coming. And in that purpose, she had succeeded. But the cost was everything else. The reunion was brief, arranged under watchful eyes, more transaction than gift. It was part of a grim business. The North Korean regime demanded vast sums of money from Japanese Korean families for the privilege of reunion. Each meeting was bought in gold, every embrace priced like ransom. For Eiko, the moments were too short, too controlled, but they were real. She touched her parents' hands. She heard their voices. And for the first time in nearly 3 decades, she was a daughter again. Yet even this joy carried sorrow. Her parents would return to Japan free. She would remain trapped. The visit ended. The prison walls closed once more, and the long wait began again. But even after the brief reunion in 1986, Eiko remained trapped in North Korea. The meeting with her parents had been bought with gold, rationed in hours, controlled under watchful eyes. When they returned to Japan, she was left behind, her reality unchanged. Yet from that moment on, something vital sustained her: packages from Japan. Her parents began sending clothing, handbags, and small luxuries from their home country. In North Korea, these Japanese goods were treasures. She could sell them, trade them, and with that, keep her children fed. Each package was more than survival, it was a lifeline. Proof that her parents were alive. Proof that she had not been forgotten. Through those gifts, she endured. Years passed. Her children grew. One by one, they married, began lives of their own. And before she realized it, she was 60 years old. No longer the 17-year-old girl who had boarded the ship, but now a grandmother, hardened by decades of survival. And as her children became independent, a thought took hold in her heart. Now I can go. Now I can risk everything. For decades, she had endured only for her children's sake. But with them grown, she felt her duty was fulfilled. If she were caught and killed during escape, at least her children would live on. She had no more regrets. And so, she resolved, she would escape, and she would see her parents again. The journey was perilous. She told no one of her plan. Carrying jewelry and goods that could be bartered for help, she made her way north to the border. The Tumen River lay ahead, a narrow but deadly line between captivity and the chance of freedom. By day she scouted the route, blending into the market crowds. By night she prayed, waiting for the right moment. Finally, under the cover of day, she stepped into the river. The water bit at her legs, icy and fast. Stones slipped beneath her feet. Each step could have been her last. But she pressed on, gripping the thought of her parents' faces. At last she stumbled onto the far bank. She was in China, but freedom was not immediate. In China, she was still a fugitive. North Korean agents hunted defectors relentlessly, and Chinese authorities often repatriated those they caught. Brokers demanded money. Some cheated her, others threatened to sell her. Still, she kept moving, clutching the jewels and goods she had saved, trading them step by step for survival. At last, she reached the Japanese consulate. She pleaded her case, her voice shaking but resolute. She was not a stranger, but a Japanese-born citizen who had been lured into North Korea at 17. Officials checked her name against the old repatriation ship lists, and there it was, her identity confirmed. She was accepted. And so, in 2003, 43 years after she had boarded that ship as a hopeful 17-year-old girl, Kawasaki Eiko returned to Japan. But she did not return as the girl who had left. She came back as a 60-year-old grandmother, her youth stolen, her life scarred, yet her will unbroken. Her father was waiting, but age and illness had taken his voice. He could no longer speak. Still, when he saw her, his eyes widened with recognition. Tears welled up. She grasped his hand and whispered, "I will never go back. I am here. Rest easy now." Days later, he passed away. But she had made it in time. She had returned, not as a child, but as a daughter once more after 43 years of silence. Her return was quiet, almost hidden. No cameras, no headlines. For the Japanese government, the repatriation project was an embarrassment better forgotten. For Eiko, it was the closing of a 43-year nightmare, but she did not remain silent. She began to speak, to write, to testify. She told of the deception that stole nearly 100,000 lives, of families broken, of her own lost youth. She spoke of the letters that had saved her parents, and the friend whose family had perished because warnings had gone unheeded. It was not repatriation, she declared. It was deception. It was a state-sponsored abduction. Her words carried the weight of 4 decades of suffering. And in her own voice, she gave meaning to her endurance. I survived because my parents did not come. I survived because I had to tell the world. For 43 years, I carried their promise. And now, I carry their story.